Hi, I'm Jeff Ray, your host for Economic Outlook. Welcome to our program. We hope you enjoy the show. Please make plans to join us each week as we discuss the region's most important economic development initiatives with a panel of experts. The South Bend ethanol plant once faced an uncertain future as owners considered selling it for scrap. However, Verbio North American Holdings purchased the plant, and their plan to invest $230 million into the property will convert the site into a state-of-the-art biorefinery. We'll dive deeper into what's planned at the site and hear more about how Verbio is leading the way in renewable energy industry coming up on Economic Outlook. Verbio, with headquarters in Germany, is a leading manufacturer of biofuels and bioenergy. The company began producing biofuel in 2001 and today has more than 1,000 employees at locations in Europe, Asia, and North America. They recently purchased the former South Bend ethanol plant and have plans for significant improvements to the operations. We're sitting down today with Greg Northrup, the president and CEO of Verbio North America, to learn more about what they are doing on site and what their expansion plans will mean to the regional economy. Welcome, Greg.
Good. Thank you very much, Jeff, for inviting us to be part of your show.
Greg, thank you. I'm pretty excited. We had a chance to meet about a year ago and talk a little bit about this. And folks who are in our region are very familiar with the South Bend ethanol plant. If you're driving on the bypass, in particular, you've seen it. But I think people have been unfamiliar with exactly what's going on the site, and especially now. And so I wanted to talk a little bit about that. So first, let's do a Verbio background a little bit. Tell us, people unfamiliar with Verbio, tell us a little bit about Verbio.
So the company's been around since about 2000. It was originally founded by a gentleman by the name of Klaus Sauter. And what's interesting about this, Jeff, is that Klaus is from the agricultural background and is a grower himself. And so as he was looking at the renewable energy industry, which we're going to talk about over the course of this interview, Klaus became very interested in renewable energies. Europe was talking about this as a critical subject. And I think the Europeans are probably 10 to 15 years ahead of us in terms of their thinking regarding the impact of energy sources, energy supply, energy reliability, diversity of supply. And Klaus, being the entrepreneur that he is, saw that this was an opportunity. And so he started all this almost about 25 years ago now, and has been very successful in terms of developing the company. When I started with Verbio back in 2018, we had 500 employees. Today we have almost 1,300 employees because of the expansion that we've been doing internationally, principally as part of that process. But Klaus was looking at the European market and didn't see many opportunities for additional growth over and above what he had currently been able to accomplish. And so he had spent a couple, 3 years looking at the U.S. market. They've looked at markets besides the U.S. as well. We have a plant that we own in India now that's similar with a different feedstock. But started looking at the U.S. market back in 2016, 15, and said, oh, well, maybe this is where I need to think about making my next series of investments. And so lucky us, here we are today. We have 2 operating plants now that we can talk about as we go forward. But German engineering is a key component of who we are and how we operate. The technology that we're using today in South Bend as well as in Nevada, Iowa, has been in development for the last 10 to 15 years. And there was a lot of work that was done on the anaerobic digestion process that we use to actually make methane gas from the waste streams that we put into the plant. And that's our competitive advantage, is our knowledge of technology and our knowledge of how to do this technology at industrial scale. We can talk more about the sources of renewable natural gas, which is one of our primary products, but there's nobody in the U.S. going to do what we do here in South Bend or what we currently do in Nevada, Iowa.
Great. No, I'm excited to dive a little bit deeper into that. So let's, before we dive into that, talk a little bit about historically here in South Bend. So people familiar with South Bend ethanol plant, like I said, they've seen it on the bypass for 40 plus years. All they remember is it had a funny smell sometimes, and there was steam or smoke, it looked like rising up into the air. Give us some background history on the local
Well,
plant.
the really good news for your audience, Jeff, is that we've taken care of the smell issue for
All
the most
right,
part.
they'll be happy to hear that. Exactly.
I think since we took over the operation over a year ago, I haven't received any complaints about odor issues.
In
and
fact,
I don't.
And I was on site last month, didn't smell a thing. So
Yeah,
no, I think it's good. But
happily, that's one of the things
Yeah, it
that
is.
has been
Yeah.
dealt with. And I think that was dealt with before we came on
Yeah.
board. But
yeah, so talk historically, because I think
So-
like the news, for example, in recent years, had sort of painted a bleak picture of the future of that site. A couple years ago, there was a lot of uncertainty about it. Talk to us just about the history a little bit.
yeah, so the plant began operating almost 40 years ago now. I think it's one of the, if not the oldest, one of the oldest operating ethanol production facilities in the United States. And I think my understanding of initially they were very successful when the ethanol industry was still starting to ramp up. But at some point things became difficult for the previous owner, and another company called Mercuria bought the plant. I think it's 5, 6, 7 years ago. The distinction is they were a trading company, so they had one operating plant. They're typically a broker, so they operate in the international markets, brokering energy products along with other kinds of trade issues, commodities. And we're aware of Mercuria because of our relationships internationally with the trading markets and those kinds of things. And so I think we became aware of the fact that maybe there was an opportunity for us to purchase the plant at what we thought would be a very attractive price. And I think Mercuria was ready to recognize that they're not an operating company, they're a trading company, and so they weren't making the kind of capital investments in the facility that would allow them to continue to operate in a maybe more financially responsible way for their shareholders. And so happily for us, about 18 months ago, we started discussions with them, and in May of last year, we actually closed on the purchase of the facility. I think what people are going to see is that we're going to make some significant investments, not only in the renewable energy side to make renewable natural gas, but into the ethanol side. So we're going to upgrade the facility to today's standards from a production standpoint. In fact, we hope to go, they've been running about, I think, 60 million ethanol gallons of production per year. We're currently at about 80 million plus. Next year, or in the next 2 years, we hope to be up to 100 million gallons of ethanol production. So we're going to significantly ramp up the capabilities from the ethanol side and then add in the renewable natural gas side as the other really exciting piece about what's going on.
Great. Let's talk ethanol for a second, because it sounds like with growing demand, so consumers, for example, are embracing this, are seeking out renewable. What's happening in the consumer?
Yeah. So from a historical perspective, 2005, 2007, the U.S. government passed something called the Renewable Fuel Standards, and that's really what started the creation of the ethanol industry. And obviously, it's driven right now by the corn production, and so the good news for the growers is there's significant demand in corn. We use, to put in perspective, in South Bend, we use 28 million bushels of corn as the feedstock for the ethanol production facility. There's over 250 ethanol plants in the United States, most of them based in the U.S. because of the access to corn and the agricultural belt that exists in that area. So. So it's a great market, not only for the consumer that's using ethanol in their fuel purchases, and pretty much you can get ethanol, it's called E10, at most filling stations. I think they're trying to now get it to put to the point where it would be E15, so 15% of the gasoline would be ethanol. And similar to any other product that was initially introduced, there was some skepticism about, well, do I want to put this in my car? You know, if that's fine for somebody else's vehicle, but not in mine. The data all shows that actually ethanol is a cleaner burning fuel, which is the purpose of it from an environmental standpoint, but it's also better for your engine in that it burns cleaner. And so for the internal operations of the combustion engine, it's been a great product. For us, it just becomes another source of our production process. And so what happened in the ethanol industry, the waste stream was called stillage. Okay. So think of, you put the corn in, you mashed it up, you made it into ethanol, but the output then afterwards is called stillage. The stillage currently is being used to make what's called distillers dried grain. We actually dry it. We have to spend energy to dry the stillage because then it becomes it's like a food base for cattle, chickens, poultry. And it's a dry bag product per se. So what we're going to do, though, instead of using it as distilled dried grain, we're going to use it as fuel for the renewable natural gas that we will make at the site. So we'll be making natural gas out of it. And then we'll still have a byproduct once we get done with that called humus, which then is a product that can go back to the farmer as a soil amendment. So now we went full cycle. We harvested the corn, we turned it into ethanol, we turned the waste stream into renewable natural gas, and then we're going to take the waste stream and it goes back to the soil as a soil amendment. So now we've gone full cycle with there is no waste product coming off our facility, which is always kind of interesting. And so
yeah, the science of this amazed me. I think when we were together on site to hear a little bit about like all of this and kind of the different applications and how you don't leave any waste, I think is pretty phenomenal. So back to maybe U.S. and Germany a little bit. So these are scientists in a lab somewhere saying we could take this. How does one decide to take the stillage and you make other energy out of it?
Well, we've always known that, even in our waste management systems, we've always known if you have biological material, as it breaks down, it creates manure, or methane, sorry. It creates methane. Well, if you can capture that methane in a constructed process, in an engineered process, then the methane can be used to make renewable natural gas. But think of the scale question that we just talked about. So there will be 16 tanks on site, each one 2.5 million gallons in size. If you stand behind it, as a person, you look like a minuscule, like a piece of microscope, process. They're huge tanks. Inside those tanks, though, as the molecules are breaking down, it's a biological process that actually creates methane. We take the methane then, and we upgrade it to pipeline quality. So it looks no different, Jeff, than fossil-based renewable natural gas or natural gas. It looks no different. And in fact, when we put it in the pipeline, we have to meet the specifications, in this case of NIPSCO, because you and I can't tell the difference between our molecule and the molecule that came out of the ground as a fossil-based natural gas product. And so when it goes into your home, you really don't know if you're using ultimately my gas or gas that came from a well, because all the molecules are going into this distribution system. The United States is in a really wonderful position, though. We have this huge integrated network of pipelines that moves natural gas across the country. And so it made it very easy for us, because then we don't have a transportation issue. We put it in the pipeline that sits out our front door.
That's phenomenal to learn about this, and I appreciate you sharing a little bit. So you touched briefly in the direction you're going. So we celebrated last month the beginning of your expansion project. The company plans to make major investment. Just talk to us a little bit about kind of timing and what people might see as you're going through your improvement process.
Yeah. So first of all, let me say too, Jeff, before we get down this road too far, I want to thank the city of South Bend and the City Council of South Bend for their support, because about a year ago I was talking to the City Council about our request for tax abatement to support the investment that we're going to make. $230 million of investment that we will make in this facility. And so people sometimes think tax breaks are a way that the city shouldn't be giving away money, that in fact we should just be accepting that responsibility. But this is an investment that we're making in the community, and we want the community to make an investment in us as well, so that we're both partners in this process. So I see tax abatements not as a giveaway, but it's an investment in a partnership that we want to have with the city of South Bend and the citizens of this community. So
yeah, and if I could interrupt, because I think South Bend in particular has probably done it better than others, recognizing that your large capital investment up front means you had to put a lot out the door, and so if they can help soften that. So I love the tax phase-in better than abatement, sometimes, because you're still paying taxes on what you were paying before on it, but the city deserves some real credit, I think, from getting that.
So I didn't want to be get too
Yeah.
far down the road
Yeah.
without acknowledging the importance of that.
And it is really, it's, as you mentioned, it's public-private partnership, right?
Yeah.
And you know, I think that South Bend's in it for the long haul, and you're in it for the long haul. And
Yeah.
anyway, it was nice to see that partnership come together. So
Yeah.
thanks for
and
sharing.
and
that.
we have a similar support from the state of Iowa,
Yeah.
or state
Yeah.
of Indiana.
Yep.
So $230 million. The majority of that will go into the construction of the renewable natural gas facilities, the 16 tanks that I talked about.
Yep.
And they're the bulk of the capital investment that's going to be required to make renewable natural gas. But as you would imagine, then there's lots of pipes and wires that have to all be connected to make all this work. And at the same time, some of the money will be spent, as I mentioned earlier in the conversation, to upgrade the ethanol facility so that now we have a 21st century operating facility that's meeting today's standards for production and efficiency when all is said and done. It's what we do really well as a technology company. And so I'm always confident of talking about what we do because we actually walk our talk. I was, as an anecdote, when we were doing the facility out in Nevada that is a similar design in the sense that we have ethanol production facilities there that we will match with renewable natural gas. But when we first started there, everybody said, well, we should talk about this with the community, the government, et cetera. I said, well, talk about what we're actually going to do once we start doing it. So we bought that facility in 2018. We started producing renewable natural gas, the equivalent of 7 million gallons annually of renewable natural gas in December 2021, and that's when we talked about it. And we will do the same thing here. Here we're trying to educate people and let them know what we're doing. But the real test will be, are we producing 100 million gallons of ethanol, as we hope to do in 2026, and produce 2.8 BCF, billion cubic feet of natural gas at the same time.
Wow. And we mentioned, I think in our opening tease, about you being a leader in this industry, as I think you and Klaus both mentioned, not many people are doing this, right? You're kind of on this cutting edge of this renewable energy phenomenon where you're trying to do some new things here.
Not many people are doing this in the sense that nobody's doing this in a manufacturing sense at industrial scale. So where does renewable natural gas come from today? About half of it comes from landfills. So what's going on in landfills, they capture the methane that's been evaporating into the environment. And now there's a real push to actually capture that gas, methane gas, do the same thing, upgrade it to pipeline quality, and it's at landfills across the country. The other major source of renewable natural gas comes from dairy farms. And what they do there is they take the manure and they put the manure into anaerobic digestion tanks. And again, it has a biological process that causes it to break down and make methane. And the good news for us as a country is the dairy farms, they don't like to say it this way, but there's an environmental issue with manure that's actually degrading and causing, people can only smell the odor, but what's really happening is degrading and sending greenhouse gases into the environment. So by capturing the methane gas and making it, the manure, and making it into methane, it's a really good thing, not only for the environment, but for the farmer, because now he's got a new revenue stream, and then we've got a source of renewable natural gas. To put all that in perspective, though, to get the equivalent of what I will produce here in South Bend, you probably need 10 dairy farms with 30,000 head of cattle each to get the same equivalent value, or the same equivalent output ultimately. So the scale is the big difference, and we're doing it as a technology where we control the processes, and so I'm really proud of what we do as a company, and I'm looking forward to the growth opportunities that we will see on a go-forward basis.
Great. Let me go personal for a second with you. So how does one find his way into this field? So you're running the North American operations of this pretty important company. How did you find your way into this space?
Well, the short history is I was an executive with an electric and gas utility company.
Okay.
I did a lot of international work at the same time, so I understand the electricity business and the natural gas business.
Okay.
And then for a long time, I ran my own consulting business in the renewable energy sector.
Okay.
And so those two things kind of were the launch pad into my relationship with Verbiome, and a whole different story. But
Yeah.
I met Klaus, and we hit it off pretty well. I did a 6-month study for him, a market entry study, to say, well, should you come to the United States, what's the benefit, et cetera, et cetera. So after 6 months of evaluation in late 2017, Klaus said, well, if you think this is such a good idea, I need a president and CEO. And I said, sign me up because I'm ready to go. It's very exciting. It's for me. I got enough gray hair. You can see that I'm towards the end of my career, but this is just an exciting time for us, and this is what keeps me young.
Yeah, it's very exciting to see. So Klaus, Greg, as we're out on site with you and Klaus, we get to meet a number of your employees. Let's shift to workforce and talk workforce, because you, like every employer in the marketplace, are trying to find top quality workers, trying to find that team, plug them in to do all the important things you need to do. Talk to us a little bit about just the kinds of jobs that you have on at the plant, the kind of skills that you need for workforce. Give us that kind of summary for somebody who's not familiar.
Yeah, and maybe what people will be more familiar with, if they're familiar with oil refineries and those kinds of facilities, this is the same thing. It's a biorefinery in the sense that we're making renewable energy, but it's a refinery in the sense that you need engineers that understand process, you need skilled technicians that actually run the operating systems. We need skilled maintenance people in terms of the skill sets of electricians, plumbers, all those kinds of people that you would think that are important to these operations. And for us, even though we have a lot of money invested in capital, we always believe that the people capital is the most important investment we can make. And so we, like other employers, are kind of in some sense struggling to find well-qualified people, which then requires us to make sure that we have good packages. I think I can safely say, Jeff, though this was interesting, I was at the plant just before we came to do this, and I talked to a lot of the management staff at the plant. I said, we're really fortunate to have a really good crew of people, but now we need to build on that crew. We have currently about 61 employees, and over the next couple of years we're going to go up to 90. So we need to find the right people to do this in the right way. And so if anybody's got any leads for us on talents, we'd be happy to talk to them.
Sure. So are there, maybe our conversation today piques the interest of some. Maybe folks don't think they have the skill set. Do you have some entry level kind of positions that you train and sort of get people on the path, or do you need a more specialized?
It's a combination of both, Jeff. I'm big on. I did a lot of work with interns at one point in time, and I'm big on interns. So I'm big on bringing people that are in the educational field, but then trying to understand what is the business sector looking for in terms of the skills. And so I think there's a mix of people that we're trying to hire that have prior experience and background in the industry, but at the same time we're going to want to build our own team of people that are coming to us because they want to be. I find a lot of people want to be in the renewable energy business because we're doing the right kinds of things for our country, and if we can do it successfully financially, which is what we're all about because we have shareholders just like anybody else, that makes it very exciting for people, particularly young people looking for a future that says, am I doing the right kinds of things to help society with the benefits that we're producing at this plant? So I think maybe I'm a little bit biased, but I think people can feel good about working for us, and so.
I do think, having been there and being a novice in this space, just being really impressed with the whole sustainability, the impact on the environment, the lack of waste, creating a product that there's a growing demand for. There's a lot of things that I do think could make people feel really interested in getting up and going to work every day doing that.
Yeah, it's just very rewarding, and. I think that's what's important, and that's what I like to talk about is where we start from ag residue or waste streams or corn, and then we go full cycle all the way back to the grower. One of the markets that's important is the grower, because that's our source of feedstock, and so we want a healthy ag sector. We try to be fair in terms of our purchase prices for corn, for our input. In the same case out in Nevada, we use corn stover, which is the waste stream from corn, as the feedstock for that plant. So it's a little bit different model, but similar in the sense that growers are benefiting from what we're trying to do in the ag sector. And it's a way to complement ag and energy together. That's why when I first talked about Klaus's background, he came from ag and then into renewable energy, and now we've made this marriage between the two major things that are critical to our country, ultimately.
Yeah, it's interesting, especially on the bypass. Sometimes you can see the trucks full of corn ready to unload there because the busy thing. So as we get close to the end in our last couple minutes here, talk a little bit. So Iowa's a couple of years ahead of us in terms of where you're at in that process, right? So any lessons learned along the way that have helped you better prepare for investing in South Bend and growing, expanding here?
Actually, I think the two plants are complementary. The Iowa plant that we bought was designed to be what's called a cellulosic ethanol plant. Unfortunately for DuPont, it wasn't successful. Fortunately for us, it was a really good buy. Yeah. So the majority of the ethanol assets were already there, but we built the renewable natural gas assets first. And we started producing renewable natural gas, and now the ethanol commissioning is basically underway as we speak. So it will be a biorefinery. In this case, the ethanol facility was up and running, so we're able to benefit off the revenue streams that are generated from the existing business while we build the renewable natural gas business. So I think the two differences that complemented us as it relates to the natural gas versus the ethanol, and we have people with expertise in both, and it's the integration of the two capabilities that really make us different in terms of the others. But I'd say the lesson learned is this is a fun business, but you got to pay attention to dot the I's, cross the T's, and make sure you stay within the confines of the regulatory process.
Great. So, Greg, as we start to wrap up, so if we pique their interest, they want to learn more about Verbio and the careers and such, where should we
go? To our website, www.berbio.us, and on their website they'll find a page that would direct them to our human resources people if they're interested in an employment opportunity, and we'd be interested in talking to them.
Great. Well, thank you for sharing your story today. Really appreciate this. We're excited about the progress. We'll have you back for an update, and we'll get out to the site maybe when you're done.
That'd be perfect.
And show our viewers what's going on there. So
I thank you very much, Jeff, for the time.
That's it for our show today. On behalf of the entire team here at PBS Michiana WNIT, thank you for watching or listening to our podcast. To watch this episode again or any of our past episodes, you can find Economic Outlook on WNIT.org or find our podcast on most major podcast platforms. We also encourage you to like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter. I'm Jeff Ray. I'll see you next time.
This WNIT local production has been made possible in part by viewers like you. Thank you.